Yo, what's up? Good morning, everybody. Russell here. It is January 20th, Saturday, January 20th at 9 a.m. Welcome, everybody, back to Code Noobs, our weekly live stream. Hello, Randall. Hello, Danny. How are you guys today?
Doing well.
Nice. You got
Yeah,
your
feeling
coffees.
good.
Feeling good? You got your coffee, your tea, or
Got the coffee. It smells
yerba
delicious.
mate
Got my tea.
Mm,
tea? Nice. I got coffee.
Mm.
mm.
I had a
Um,
coffee beforehand.
Yeah, I actually this is my second coffee of the day, believe it or not, and it's only 9 a.m. So I'm pretty hooked up right now.
Yeah, it
Welcome
helps.
everybody who's watching. If anybody's on here, if not, we'll see you in a little bit because I'm sure people will join in later. So today, you guys have any like special announcements about like this week? Anything cool that's happened or nothing?
Special announcements? No.
I don't know. Just like
I
anything
had
cool
I
that's
had this
happened.
week. I'll
Tech,
be
tech.
honest. This week I had a little bit of imposter syndrome creeping up.
Ooh,
Because
why?
it's such a it's one of those things where like you learn stuff and you feel really competent in it, and then you're like, okay, cool, let's move on to the next level, and then you're like a complete noob all over again, and it's like, oh my God, do I even know what I'm doing at all? I am
Dude,
such an imposter.
totally.
Oh,
That is like the life of a developer, like
yeah,
full
dude.
on. I
You
saw a
know, it's
meme
fun.
this week about that. Literally, sorry, Danny, I keep cutting you off. It was like a meme where it was like the two sides of being a developer, and it's like one, and it's like I am a god, and then the other
Yeah,
side,
I've
like
seen that one.
I'm an idiot.
Yeah, but dude, I feel that way. It's like I periodically go through feeling like I know exactly what I'm doing to the imposters. You always get it. It never goes away.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter what you do, though. I think like we all feel that because we all want to always be better. Most of us do, I think. So we all feel that way, no matter what we do, no matter how long we've done it for. You
yeah.
know?
It's really
There's
weird
a
too, I think, in tech because there's so many like little avenues of tech like all over. Like there's all these like weird things that I've never even sort of touched in the tech world, like robotics and like things like that. And you see these people who are like, you'll see a 14-year-old kid who's like a who I saw something where like some kid made like a chat GPT enabled robot that recognized itself in the mirror and he was like, whoa, like AI recognize, and I'm like, I can't even conceptualize like how to build that robot. But
Dude. Well, that's
so
why when I thought of the topic this week of like staying ahead, like, that's why I was thinking of that too, because like it's such a fast-paced industry. New things come out all the time. It's like you feel behind all the time. And like no matter what you start, and I got this feeling so much when we first started learning, but I still feel this now. Like no matter what you're getting good at, it's like it's so easy to feel like there's a new thing out that you should be using because it's better. And I
yeah.
think that feeling is hard to deal with. Or like a new industry, like, oh, should I move into that? Because that seems popular. Like,
Hmm.
everybody talks about Web3 and like AI right now. It's like, should I be there? Like, and it's like there's just
Yeah.
so much comes out that it's hard to like wrap your head around what you should do.
and
Yeah, it's
it's
tough.
it's crazy fast. Like I remember when I was an undergrad and I was learning programming back then. We learned C++, plus plus, and that was like the latest thing. And
Hmm.
there weren't that many options. If you didn't learn C++, plus plus, there was like, well, you could learn
See,
Java.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there
Yeah.
was C, and then there was like Fortran and like really old stuff.
Cobol.
But yeah,
Cobol.
COBOL, but nobody would
yeah,
use that. So it's like there was pretty much a handful of options. And now for every language, there's at least a handful of frameworks.
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
my God. Yeah. And each
I mean,
one's
it's
like
like
different and yeah, it's crazy how much there is.
solving a different problem. It's different syntax, different structure. It's like it's insane. Yeah, it moves so quickly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, so that makes a good point, right? So the question of today's live stream is how do you actually stay ahead of everything or, up to date with everything in the evolving tech industry? And I just want to say, what's up, Chris Edwards? Thanks for tuning in, man. So what do you guys have? Like, do you have any suggestions of things that you've done in the past to sort of stay up to date with what's going on, or how do you find out about these new technologies? Go for it, Danny.
I was gonna say that's the other question too of like, should you even bother trying to stay ahead?
Mm,
Like that's the other side of it too, because like so much stuff comes out, and I feel this way all the time. Where like you said with the robotics thing, right? Or like yeah, like robotics is awesome. I don't know that much about it though. Do I want to do that? I mean, that is
yeah.
definitely more like building too, or like the AI thing, or like Web3, like, should I be staying on top of all these things? It's like, it's impossible. Because it's like anything else, like every one of these areas is a whole body of knowledge that you need to
Yeah.
learn. And like, yeah, the more you learn, the more you'll be able to quickly adapt and change into new things. And I think it's important. Like, I've been trying to keep that in mind, like, especially when I started out, like, the better I get, the more I'll be able to adapt and jump into new things anyway. So
Yeah.
is it better just to focus on one thing and get good at it and get comfortable and know it so then I can move on? Or, because I think you can get in this trap of jump, like we talked about before, jumping to the next shiny thing, the next shiny thing, the next shiny thing, and never really knowing anything either.
Yeah. I think it's my response to that would be it's a combination, right? Because every little aspect is like what you said, it's a rabbit hole that you can go down literally forever. I mean, you could go down a rabbit hole of even just like as simple as HTML. There is a rabbit hole of
Yeah.
things you can learn about HTML. And that's probably the most basic language, if you want to even call it a programming language, right?
How often when you're coding like React or something, do you run into something that you like newish or something you kind of forgot about with like CSS or something? Dude, it
Oh,
happens all the
yeah.
time.
It
Like there's
happens
so
all
much
the
stuff.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's things that you just, especially with JavaScript too, because there's so many like JavaScript methods out and they keep pumping out new ones. I don't know if like people realize that, but every like couple
Oh,
of months they
constantly.
update JavaScript and they add like methods and things. So there's what's crazy is, sometimes I think about this, right? Is I want to do this one thing. And then you go to look it up, and there's like 15 different ways to do that one thing,
Yeah.
right? Like when you want to do like an asynchronous function in JavaScript, there's like multiple ways to go about doing that, right?
I
And
wonder if that means that's why security is so much worse these days. Because back in
probably,
the day, there was a few things everybody knew those few languages. Now nobody, everybody's like running to catch up all the time.
yeah. And so I think it's both, right? But I would say like the best thing you can do is just head in the direction of what you're passionate about or what interests you, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to keep driving you forward when you feel imposter syndrome, when you feel
Yeah.
confused or lost or whatever. So that would be my argument. What were you going to say, Randall?
Well, I like what you said there, aim in the direction of your passions. Because it's one thing that you have to remember that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And this is a
Mm-hmm.
thing we got to juggle all the time. I'm talking to myself particularly because I want to do everything. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so tough to like limit my focus on a few things. And I
Yeah.
just try and like it's a exercise because I want to do everything. And it's like, okay, this I need to just focus on this stuff. I know there's this shiny object here and this thing here that I want to do and that thing there, but I need to just learn this first. And one thing that there's it's always nice to stay on top of the new stuff because then you seem like trendy and hip and cool and whatever.
Mhm.
I have a theory that a lot of like staying on top of the new stuff is for the people who are bored with the old stuff, not necessarily for the people who are learning. And here's why. So like pretty much with a lot of the new stuff, you're doing all the testing. So who knows if it's going to stand the test of time?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
could be something that comes out and it's gone next year. And do you
Yeah.
want to waste? Do you want to? I mean, not wasting, but do you want to spend all of your time learning this thing that may not be necessary then? So,
Yeah.
me personally, I think early on when learning, it's more important to learn the tried and true things and try and
Mhm.
spend as much time on them. You can still learn some flashy stuff, but leave that for the people who already know what you're trying to learn like the back of their hand, and they're just looking for something new because they're bored.
Well,
Yeah. That's a really good point.
I'm glad you made that point too, because I was thinking about that where like, if you're working for somebody, if you have a job, if you're doing freelance or a job and you're making decisions about what technologies to use, you don't want to use something brand new because you don't, like you said, you don't know if it's going to be supported in a year or if they're going
Yeah.
to make major updates that screws up, everything. So in a certain sense, it is better, like in those cases, to know what you're working with and know what you're using so you can do the job that you need to do. And I think juggling that is hard. And you're right. That's the one thing that's nice about tech. You can always learn. Even if you're really advanced, there's always new stuff coming out. So it's like you're never without options, at least.
Yeah. You made me think of a couple things with that actually. One is, there's like bar charts. Have you ever seen that where it's a moving graphic, like a video graphic, and it has like bar
Mhm.
charts and they say like the most popular coding language, and then
Mhm.
it'll show, and it's like over time, like over the years. And it's funny because if you look at one of those for languages, it's really weird, but I think it's pretty true, right? You go back like 20, 30 years and you have, yeah, like Fortran and COBOL, which like died out, but then you have like C and JavaScript, right? And they've been around for so long and they've gone probably up and down that chart like multiple times. But at the end of the day, like still almost all software out there, whether it's a web application or like an actual application on a computer, they're mostly written in C or JavaScript. Like,
Java.
yeah.
Yeah.
Were you
Well,
talking
no,
about Java?
JavaScript for like websites and stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Like once JavaScript came out, I mean, that's pretty much dominated. Yes, there's React and there's Angular and there's Vue and there's Next. They're all just JavaScript. That's all that it is, right? So it's like if you understand JavaScript, you can code in any of those frameworks. And ultimately, like people have made these arguments over and over and over again is that it just you can code anything in JavaScript like vanilla or just jQuery. Like it's almost as good as any of these frameworks because they abstract so much that sometimes it can just be confusing. It might be easier to just code in JavaScript than it is to use these frameworks.
Well, that's the other thing about frameworks is they're great because they help us accomplish a task and they do some of the work for you. But because of that, there's also a trade-off of that, the abstraction. So it's
Yeah.
actually, like you said, like when you're new, it's better to know what you're working with. Then the abstraction makes sense. But if you just jump
Yeah.
into a framework that you don't know, I mean, that was one of the problems with the boot camp that we did, right? They kept making us use these frameworks where we didn't understand the core principles.
Oh,
So the framework
yeah.
makes zero sense because you have no
Yeah.
clue why the hell anything is arranged like it's arranged, or why you're using this new syntax you've never encountered. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
but they all solve a problem. I think that's the other thing to keep in mind is like frameworks were they're designed to do something by people who solve a problem to fix. And so you kind of need to know the base language first.
Yeah. Totally.
And
So,
here's another
uh,
thing.
yeah.
So like I think part of the drive to stay ahead of the curve is like people want to be like, well, I know all this stuff so I can put it all on my resume so I'll be able to apply for all these jobs. No employer wants to see a million things on your resume because they know you're
Yeah.
not good at anything.
That's
And
very true.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like it's better that you just have JavaScript on your resume and you have your own
Yeah.
personal profile website, you have some business websites that you made, you have whatever else that you've done, little games with JavaScript, so you can say, "Hey, I built these things," as opposed to being like, "I know this and every new thing that's been out there."
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that like, and not to call anybody out. I've seen people who have come to me for sort of mentoring and said, "Hey, I'm trying to apply for jobs, or find work or whatever, like find people I can build websites for, but I'm having no success. What should I do?" And the first thing I ask them is, "Can I see your resume or your portfolio?" And a lot of times you'll see like somebody will create a resume or a portfolio website where the website is like decent for like a junior developer, right? It's nothing like crazy. It's just very average. But then they'll list 100 different languages that they know, or like
Yeah.
like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Vue, Angular,
C++.
every SQL, yes, C++,
Node,
Yeah.
Java. And
Mongo,
you're like, well, that
SQL.
seems great, but your own website is like not even that great. So I totally agree with you. I think from the employer's perspective, if I were employing a software developer, I'd rather have somebody who's like, I suck at 90% of things, but I kick ass at like Svelte, right? And then
Mhm.
I'd rather hire that person if that's what I need than like hire the person who is somewhat good at like a million different languages, but
Well,
not really good at anything.
to your point also, we already talked about, like if you really know JavaScript and that's on your resume, you'll be able to learn. If you already know React, you'll be able to learn the JavaScript framework. It's not like
Yeah.
you already have the skill set to do that. It's not like it's a big deal. So in some sense too, it's almost irrelevant to like list all these things because they know you can learn it anyway. That's the point.
Yeah, totally. What
So
were you laughing at, Randall?
Because you chose Svelte out of any language, and
Yeah,
then and
yeah,
then
right.
and then I was thinking,
obscure one.
if you're really good at Svelte, does somebody come up to you and say, "My, you're looking Svelte today"?
I'm always looking svelte.
Exactly.
What do
Oh
you
man.
guys is there anything you guys have specifically done to stay ahead of the curve? Like I'll just or just keep
Yeah.
on top of what's going on. Like I know like a couple things I've done I'll just mention. Like I
Go
signed
ahead.
up to the Google developers emails, so like you get like updates on what Google's doing specifically, and I enjoy that because like especially with AI and machine learning, like you get updates on like both what they're building, what they plan to do, but also like new technologies they're making. You can use them early. So that's cool.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
good way to
cool.
just keep ahead of like, what's happening. It's easy. I don't have to do much because an email comes to me monthly,
Yeah,
that kind of helps.
I have a couple of them. So probably primarily would be YouTube because I watch a lot of YouTube tutorials and videos, and I tend to watch like a couple YouTube channels that I think are pretty good, and they usually have updates. There's one called Web Dev Simplified. That's a good one. He's like I usually fall asleep while watching those, honestly. But he has a lot of good content. Another one is it's Firestore or something like that. I forget what the name is. It's like
Fireship.
Fireship,
Fireship,
yeah.
yeah.
And he's like really good at making video. They're not like coding videos. They're not tutorial sort of videos. They're entertaining videos, but he tends to cover new topics like very quickly. So when there's new updates to ChatGPT or like different APIs or things like that, he covers those. The other things I typically do are there's a newsletter, like an email newsletter that I subscribe to is called TLDR. That's a great one because they have different categories. So they have like AI, machine learning, crypto, um, just like general dev. They have a bunch of different ones and they send you a daily newsletter that's, a couple of topics about what's going on. Um, Trying to think
I was
what
the
else.
newsletters are good. I subscribe to Thinkster, which is like a Python oriented one, but he
Mhm.
like discusses all like new stuff and like as it relates to Python kind of. Also, another good one too, I almost forgot about is there's a couple podcasts I listen to that are good that stay on top.
Mhm.
They their whole purpose is to cover like, and if you just go on any podcast app and search, you'll find them. But like
Yeah.
new developments in tech, and they're nice too because like I'm not trying to like, and again I think that's important too. Like having a high level like sense of stuff is a good idea because it lets you know what's out there, what the options are, and like how things might relate to what you're doing. But like it's not like these suggestions we're making are not things about like learning how to code that stuff. It's just being informed of what's
Yeah.
going on. So like if it does come up, you are aware of it, you know of it, and it might be something that interests you too, that might motivate you to like, go in that area.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you have something to say, Randall?
Yeah, I'll be honest in that I don't at this point in my career, I don't stay too far ahead of the curve because I'm
Mm.
still so busy struggling to catch up with all the stuff that I missed.
Yeah.
But there are a couple things that I do that kind of is like keeping up with the curve. So Ohio State University has the OSU Cyber Canon, which is like their top cybersecurity books,
Mhm.
and they have award-winning ones. So every year they have a few books that they think are like the best period about cybersecurity. So I do read the most recent books that they have there, which
That's
kind of
cool.
like it gives me the overview of what's going on. Also on Try Hack Me, whenever there's a new CVE, which is a common vulnerability that has a critical level exposure, like something that people need to know, they basically like make a little room for it so you can learn how to
Mhm.
exploit it. So that's something that I've been
Nice.
doing. And but other than that, I would say I'm so like I was what I was saying earlier is like staying on ahead of the curve is for people who really know what they're doing. I'm still so busy trying to catch up on everything that
Sure.
there's way too much old stuff for me to learn. Like I'm
But I
busy
Yeah.
think,
I'm busy teaching myself C and PHP
yeah,
and MySQL and all this old stuff that's been around forever, but that's the really critical stuff to know because if I have a strong foundation in that, then I can learn all the fluff later.
that's the other thing
Yeah.
there too is like, I think that's the other important point you make, which is a lot of times like, especially when you're starting out, you have to learn all the old stuff anyway, and like
Yeah.
so jumping up with all this new stuff doesn't help you at all. Because if you don't understand HTML, CSS, JavaScript, dude, you're not gonna be able to make websites. It doesn't matter if you know Firebase and like everything else
Yeah.
and all these frameworks, you're still not gonna be able to build it because you won't understand the core principles behind it, And I think that's like
Totally.
that's the
And
other difficulty. So sometimes not staying ahead is better, like just learning what you need to move ahead, yeah,
yeah,
for
totally.
yourself.
I agree with that. And also, by understanding the basics, like the very foundational core stuff like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you're able to write better code in those frameworks.
Yeah.
Like you have more of a knowledge base to sort of work with. I see Chris wrote here, he loves Fireship and also he's been getting TLDR for years, and that's awesome. What I wanted to mention is one of the other things that I found actually very effective in keeping up with the curve or like, new technology is networking, right? Is like other developers who talk with, because I learn way more just from like the three of us have a little like group chat, like a text chat where we just throw in like anything that we're working on or news that we see or anything that's like, just keeps us up to date. And that's one of the main
Oh,
ways
yeah.
that I've actually gotten a lot of like news about things, and through other developers too, like developers that I work with, they tell me because they're just interested in, like, developers are naturally curious and like to share what they've learned, right? So,
And
um,
create things.
yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like that combination. Yeah.
So that's been a lot of it. And so that's like, if you guys are new in development, you probably experienced this before where you're starting to learn things, right? And you're just all you're doing is engaging with tutorials and videos and so forth. And that gets you somewhere, but it doesn't get you all the way, right? Like you can only get so much out of a video that's just one-sided. You can't ask a question to a video, right? You can't ask a question to explain something different or in a better way. And so having that ability to network with other people and other developers like makes you a better developer, gives you more education, keeps you more up to date, and helps you understand. So having something like this group or group mentoring, that's a great way for you as a developer to become better and stay up to date with what's going on, understand what is and what is not important, right? Because I think that's really a big thing to distinguish here too, is that we're not just talking about, hey, you should just always have your eye on the latest news feed because you'll just sit there all the time. Like you could literally
Yeah.
just all day just absorb new stuff, but you need to be able to distinguish what is important for me on my path as a developer versus what is just noise, because there's tons of noise out there.
That's the other thing too. Like, I'm glad you mentioned that. Was like there is a ton of noise and garbage, and like our meeting every week, like that's how I learned so much about new stuff in cybersecurity. Because like I haven't focused on that, but Randy always lets me know what's going on, or like with React, like so
Yeah.
you learn so much more, and you can ask questions and get that explanation that gives you that like aha moment so much quicker, which you
Yeah.
can't do with videos and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
totally. Yeah, Chris agrees. He says you can't ask a video. That's the reason why I'm here right now. And we appreciate you being here, Chris, because we can learn from you too. So if you got any, recommendation, throw it in the chat there and we'll shout it out so other people see it. But yeah, so what else do you guys like, anything else that you've done in the past to sort of stay up to date with these things?
I will say when I first started learning, like, that new shiny thing, kind of catches your eye, right? And like I got caught up in that a little bit at first where like I was jumping around things and I just felt like I wasn't progressing. So like
Hmm.
also sometimes just turning it off and not worrying about it is also better, I think, for your own progression. So depending on
Yeah.
where you're at, like as you get further along, as you start taking on like jobs and stuff, yeah, sometimes like looking at new stuff or stuff you're unfamiliar with is good because it can help you solve problems or give you like a better method of doing something once you already have that foundation. So I
Yeah.
think that's also a big part of it that I learned was like just like focus on learning and stay up to date with like get a high level look at things because that's helpful to give you like some way to orient yourself when you run into problems where you might need something new. But otherwise, yeah, don't worry about trying to learn all of it because it's not you can't.
Yeah, you just can't. One other thing that I think is actually a way that a lot of developers get sort of like another leg up. This is a sort of obscure one, but is going to conferences, right? And
Yeah.
it's something that I've done a lot outside of web development. I haven't actually been to, I don't think, any conferences related directly to web development before. But it is something that has helped me in my career in other aspects, like going to conferences, because it's a little bit different than communicating with people in the regular sort of like everyday world. When you go to a conference, people are there to share ideas and meet new people and really just network. So it's a great opportunity to learn a lot from other people. There's also usually like talks, right? So you can get free or somewhat free education from industry leaders or people who are doing advanced things in the industry, that's where you typically show off that stuff first. So that's a great way to get it, a little bit more information too. If you're available or there's a tech conference near where you live, that's a great way to get a little bit more education. What do you guys think? You agree with that?
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
a great
definitely.
point. I'm actually going to my first cyber conference soon. I
Ooh,
was telling Danny I'm
cybersecurity, or is it like cyber or something else?
cybersecurity. But I was doing a whole bunch because it's something that like, you're worried about bringing your own computer there because is someone
Mm,
going to hack you, all that stuff.
yeah,
So I was doing a bunch of research about what to do for that. So that's pretty interesting.
yeah. You bring in like
And
a notebook so you can like take people's phone numbers down, or like
I know basically that was my plan, but I signed up for a lab, an interactive lab, and you need to bring your own computer. So I did
oh,
a whole bunch of research. Turns out that like as long as you have your computer up to date, you don't have any extraneous applications on there that could be out of date, and you use good
mm,
general cyber hygiene practices, you're okay. But also it recommends wiping the computer before and after the conference. So
mm.
like I have an old computer that I just wiped, removed everything extraneous, and set up for this conference. Take it there for that day when I'm doing the lab, and then right after that, head to a Starbucks and wipe the computer
Wipe it
again.
again. You
Yeah,
should fill it with some fun treats for people, like in case they
I,
do hack it,
just a bunch
like
of pictures of yeah,
honey
Just put
pots.
like just put like 10,000 pictures of flowers
yeah.
in my super secret folder. Don't
Super
look here.
into flowers, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's pretty good. Outside of that, like the only other things that I think I've done to sort of stay up to date would be use platforms like Reddit, things like that. Occasionally, right? Like I'm not surfing Reddit all day. I think the main thing is what we said is you sort of stay in your lane, and then you just sort of want to have your ear like listening for anything that pertains to you. And if it's something that pertains to what you're doing and is of interest to you, then I think that's a great time to dig deeper into it. But to me, there's just so much noise out there that you could literally spend all day reading about different new technologies and things like that. And you're just never going to be able to absorb all of it or make use of all of it. So it's better to just specialize sort of in what you like doing and then add things to it as they pertain to you.
And like, you just end up feeling overwhelmed too, which doesn't help you stay focused on, learning and getting to the point where you aren't overwhelmed as much. And I think
Yeah.
that that's another danger that you can have from that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Chris said, for you, Randall, I think he's saying that you should do Kali Linux on a USB and then throw it away when you're done. Isn't there
Yeah.
like another like USB based
Yeah, Tails, but that's just for
Tails?
anonymity. So it
Yeah.
doesn't, yeah. I thought about what Chris was saying too, having like a live USB and doing that. But I would still need to bring a computer there, and
Yeah.
I
Maybe
don't
you
know.
can
So
ask somebody if you can plug your USB into their computer.
yeah. Can I just use this? Let me borrow that.
Hey,
That's
I
a good
have
one.
Kali on here. Do you think I can plug this into your computer just for this lab and
Hmm.
then I'll be done? You can take it.
Where that's
Hmm.
all it is.
Sure,
Hmm.
I'm sure they'll be totally cool with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you guys
Thanks.
have
By the way,
any,
thanks, Chris.
yeah, Chris, thanks for tuning in every week, by the way. We appreciate it. Um, so yeah, I mean that's today's episode. Do you guys have any other closing thoughts?
Yeah.
Any like just came to me ideas of how to stay up to date? No. All right. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in. If you are interested, we are doing group mentoring after this at 10. So you can sign up. You just go to codenoobs.io/join group mentoring. Or
Yeah.
you just go to mentoring and scroll the bottom of the page, but join group mentoring. So
To
that's
make
it.
that easier, we should probably just change the extension to /join.
I know. I think
Right?
I might change it. I know it's a lot. So we're just gonna change it to join, but for now it's join group mentoring.
Mhm.
In the future it will be join though.
All right.
So again, thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah.
Yeah.
See you
All right,
guys
cool.
at 10 a.m.